and anybody can win the Super Bowl. We got a great week ahead. Thank you for joining us. Have a blessed day.
The rest of the wide receiver group is underwhelming. Kincaid's had some moments. They need a playmaker in the worst way this offseason. I know they keep trying to get it done or pick these guys off. Maybe Keon Coleman will be that guy. Maybe Josh Palmer will be that guy. It's not working. They haven't replaced Stephon Diggs, and it shows. And I think Josh Allen could use some help. So Buffalo Bills in the offseason, free agency, NFL draft, get yourself a big playmaker.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Notre Dame playing very well, in a position to crack the top 12. Now they have to take care of business.
Here's what I want from and again, we're going to go over who we think is actually going to make the playoffs here a little bit later in the show. But understand this, Joe. I don't want any ACC in there. I don't want any Big 12 in there. Just give me the Big 10 and the SEC. And Mike, quite frankly, if you just gave me Ohio State, Indiana, and the rest of the SEC, boom, boom.
Nah.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Let me ask you this. If they brought in Belichick, you don't think that... Yeah.
Oh, of North Carolina?
Yeah, they're playing much better now.
I wouldn't let him coach my kids. I don't even have any.
I tell you what, they would be more disciplined than what they are now.
No, they wouldn't. They'd be lifeless.
Yes, they would.
They'd be lifeless.
Yes, Brian Dable is a gutless head coach.
Bill Belichick came off a bye against
Gutless
Clemson.
head coach.
3 plays in, they gave him 150 yards.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Another sport like the NBA, which is dealing with its own, scandals, so to speak, and its own headlines with the FBI and what else comes, because this is the same FBI team that also brought the NBA scandals to light. So I'd have to imagine they're working on some other stuff as well right now, and the timing is definitely not a coincidence, but definitely some very significant news in the gambling world that now you're not going to be able to bet more than $200 on a specific pitch market.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
ESPN ends blackout on YouTube TV, plus more NFL international games ahead. FOS Today starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today, your look inside the stories shaping the business and culture of sports. I'm Baker Machado here at Front Office Sports Studios in New York City, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. Changing the game has always been our game. You can access NASDAQ 100 companies in one ETF, Invesco Distributors, Inc. Now, coming up on the show today, the latest on the NBA gambling investigation, plus why influencers have become a huge part of the LPGA. But let's start with a truce between ESPN and YouTube TV in today's main event. Well, Disney and YouTube TV came to an agreement late Friday night, ending their 2-week blackout and putting ESPN back on the platform, that ahead of a busy college football weekend. So let's bring in Front Office Sports reporter Eric Fisher. Eric, good to see you as always. So what happened that these two were able to come to a deal on Friday night?
Yeah, things really kind of moved pretty quickly because Thursday morning, when Disney had its quarterly earnings report, they'd really kind of signaled that they were potentially in for the long haul and they were going to really stick to their guns. We don't know the full terms of the deal. It did seem like they did get pretty much, parsing words, their desired economic terms. But once that sort of notion got out there that this thing could really go on for a while, there was a huge groan from the consumer marketplace that this was the last thing they wanted to hear. And I think, having another weekend, big sports weekend of consumer blowback, I think sort of forced some energy in the direction of finally getting this done.
It also seems like one of the keys to this deal is ESPN Unlimited being ingested into YouTube TV, I think by the end of 2026. What do we know about that? Because that's really sort of the key premium tier here for ESPN.
Yeah, it's a huge part of this deal. There are some similar components in some of other deals that ESPN has, but having that sort of all the full bells and whistles of the direct-to-consumer product embedded within YouTube TV, it's a huge value add for their subscribers.
So who at the end of the day do you think blinked first here? I mean, there was a lot of talk that maybe Google had won this carriage fight. Do you think Disney sort of blinked here?
I would say again, we don't know the full terms of the deal, but based on what we sort of parsed through, I would say the deal in and of itself looks to be kind of a draw where everybody kind of gets a little something and walks away a little unhappy at the same time, like a lot of these fights. So in the core deal itself looks fairly even, but given, again, the stance of where Disney publicly said they were Thursday morning, again, that looks, you could sort of call it maybe a little bit of a blanket. Certainly is a surprise that in the span of about 36 hours, 35 hours to go from one posture to a radically different one, that certainly caught me off guard.
So YouTube TV subscribers now have had a carriage sort of negotiation with Fox, with NBC, now here with ABC. Are there any other big ones for YouTube TV subscribers to have to worry about in the foreseeable future?
Not for a little while here. I mean, there's some smaller ones that are certainly going to come up, but just in the last 6 or 7 months here, YouTube TV has now done the full sweep of the 4 major broadcast networks in the U.S. and their respective companies. So that's Paramount and CBS, and then NBC, and then Fox, and now Disney and ESPN. Those are all now done for multiple years.
Is Rob Manfred calling you? Who is that? With the last little bit of time that we got over here with you, any other things that really sort of stood out to you in this negotiation here?
Again, it just how ugly this one really sort of got. That the other ones, resolved a little more quickly. This one, for a variety of reasons, got really out there. It went for the 15 days. Mm-hmm. And in our world in sports, it just because we have sort of a over-indexing to a certain degree among YouTube TV subscribers, among hardcore sports fans, this one also seemed to resonate a little bit more deeply in our world. So for a variety of reasons, this one just, really kind of bubbled up in a different way. And I think there will be some scars going forward. And what I'm also going to be interested to see is how they sort of come out on the other side, because a couple of years ago had a bruising one between Disney and Spectrum. And now they talk openly and publicly about all the new ground they're breaking together. And so, it's one thing to get the deal done, but sort of then to get to this other level like Disney has with Spectrum, it's going to be very interesting to see if we get to any sort of posture like that with YouTube.
I'm glad you mentioned all of this because, look, Eric, you've covered these fights when they're with cable networks like Charter or Spectrum. Do we think we've learned anything differently about the negotiations with tech companies like Google? And does this sort of like portend anything down the road about how these negotiations could go in the future?
Yeah, it's certainly worth noting that the scale and the economic resources and the pressure points for Google, just given the nature of their company and their size, are very different than some of these other legacy carriers. And so, yeah, it's, perhaps a bit of a wake-up call for programmers of all types that you have to sort of go into this with a different strategy and a different mindset.
Really interesting. Eric Fisher, thank you so much for your reporting on this. Meanwhile, according to The Athletic, the NBA has asked multiple teams, including the Los Angeles Lakers, to hand over documents, including cell phones and phone records. This in relation to its investigation into illegal sports gambling. And this includes cell phone information from a Lakers assistant trainer and a front office administrator with ties to LeBron James. So let's bring in Ben Horney, author of the Asset Class newsletter. So Ben, tell us a little bit more about what the NBA is looking into here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Baker. So, this is the story. Really, it's interesting. They got some information about the Lakers. The story here is that this investigation has begun. That's really what the story is. Wachtell Lipton, the law firm, has begun reaching out to teams, including the Lakers, and they're looking for cell phone records. They're taking cell phones when people, are voluntarily handing those over. Who knows what else? Perhaps emails, other documents. Just information to try to paint the full picture for themselves as they investigate. So that's what this story was. The Athletic found out that at least 10 people with the Lakers have been basically asked to give up information, which is certainly interesting.
Yeah, and I want to be clear here. LeBron James has not been charged with anything. He's not involved in this, at least according to what we've been hearing so far from the FBI. But we do know from the original indictment, Ben, that there were conspirators that were apparently trainers or somebody within the organization that allegedly was telling Damon Jones what Lakers player would be available for a game. Are these maybe people that they're looking at?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I mean, I don't know to, be fully forthright, but it is something I'm planning to look back in the indictment and try to connect some more dots. Because you'll remember, they didn't name Chauncey Billups in the gambling indictment, but it's very clear that he's one of the co-conspirators. So that's an interesting lead to look into, whether some of these people that we now know the NBA is looking, or the law firm is looking for records from, might be involved in that.
The fact that we haven't heard anything since that FBI, announcement when they had the press conference a few weeks ago, does that tell us anything about where the investigation is at right now, or is that sort of standard par for the course of where this investigation is right now?
You know, the three people who, the NBA people, Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, and Damon Jones, who were involved, they were arrested, they were released on bond, and at this point, we're waiting for future court appearances or for more information to come. I would wager that what's happening is that the investigation's happening. So there's two investigations now. The FBI is still looking into this, and then the NBA has its own investigation. So during quiet periods, it usually means that there's activity going on behind the scenes.
Anything else that you're watching regarding the NBA case here?
I reached out to every NBA team this morning to try to see who else might have been contacted, because that story says multiple teams, including the Lakers, were contacted. It also specifically says the Magic, which were one of the teams that were named in the indictment, were not contacted. So far, the only team I've heard back from is the Mavericks. They said that they're not commenting, which is not surprising. But, it was good to try to get every team on the record of have you been reached out to on this.
Ben, we know the NBA officials had met with Congress. What do we know about those conversations that they had?
So a few weeks ago, a contingent that we don't know who they were from the NBA, it wasn't Adam Silver, it wasn't Mark Tatum, it wasn't the top brass, did travel down to D.C. to brief staff of lawmakers, because at the time the federal government was shut down. So that meeting was kind of nothing because it was staff meeting with people we don't know. But I am told to expect more movement on that front. There's just nothing to report at this time. But, Congress, that committee is still looking to get Adam Silver or others into a room to ask about this.
Ben Horney, thank you so much. And, of course, you can read Ben's Asset Class newsletter by going to frontofficesports.com. We have more show ahead right after this quick break.
Notre Dame playing very well, in a position to crack the top 12. Now they have to take care of business.
Here's what I want from and again, we're going to go over who we think is actually going to make the playoffs here a little bit later in the show. But understand this, Joe. I don't want any ACC in there. I don't want any Big 12 in there. Just give me the Big 10 and the SEC. And Mike, quite frankly, if you just gave me Ohio State, Indiana, and the rest of the SEC, boom, boom.
Nah.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
It is a sickness in this league. They stink, and they should stink next year. That's it.
But the expectation is to be a 9-8 football team.
So let's shake it. Why is that the expectation? They're garbage. And traded away two of the few good guys they have.
But they're going to get how many draft picks in the first round? 3 next year?
Two.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Brissett has been that good. So this is a quarterback that I think is worth acquiring, but especially in Superflex leagues. If somebody's already got QBs passed by and Brissett's just collecting dust on somebody's bench, go out there, get him, because I think the next 4 weeks, some of the matchups too, he gets Jacksonville, he gets San Francisco, he gets Tampa. Those are going to be some higher scoring games potentially. Good news for fantasy managers who are trying to get Jacoby Brissett.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Today's prop was 15, right? And he's at 44. If you altered him to 20 or 25 plus, those are some big numbers. Like 15 and a half, like Jack Besh this morning was 11 and a half, and his number got bet up to 15 and a half. Tyler Lockett was 16 and a half and bet down to 15 and a half. If you just took a shot, like 15 to 25 is nothing. And next week, his number's not going to be 15.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado in New York, and golfer Lynn Grant won her second LPGA title over the weekend at the Annika. That, of course, the big event behind superstar Annika Sorenstam. Now, the event also featured celebs like Caitlin Clark, who competed in the second year in a row for this. So for more, let's bring in Lauren Withrow. She's a host of The Drop and also a golf broadcaster as well. Lauren, thank you so very much for joining us. So tell us a little bit more about what happened this weekend at the Annika.
Yeah, it's a big weekend for women's golf, and I would say just the growth of the game in general. You just mentioned Caitlin Clark, some of the celebrity stars that were out there. Caitlin Clark playing in the Pro-Am for the second year in a row. She's a Gamebridge ambassador, so it wasn't a surprise to see her out there. And it also wasn't a surprise when you look at the numbers of what Caitlin Clark and the Caitlin Clark effect did for this event. Last year, they had about a 590% increase in traffic year over year. I think there were almost 400 TV segments mentioning Caitlin Clark and the Annika. So it's a no-brainer to bring her back. And I think it's just an awesome integration of bringing different athletes into the game of golf, because golf is the only sport where you can really do this. I can't think of any other sporting event except maybe the Super Bowl halftime show that has the power to bring fans who aren't necessarily a fan of the sport itself to tune in and to watch and to stay tuned in through an entire event. So during the Pro-Am on Wednesday, all the eyes were on Caitlin Clark. And the other really smart thing about this, because there are always the people on the internet that say, oh, Caitlin Clark, like, let's make this about the golf. But Gamebridge and the LPGA Tour are so smart in doing this because they pair up Caitlin Clark with Nelly Korda, who was the #1 player in the world until this summer. She suffered an injury. And Lauren Wynn, who is also playing on a sponsor's exemption, just turned pro. She was a 2-time All-American at Northwestern. So not only are people going to see Caitlin Clark and get to enjoy that and all the buzz around it, but they're also going to see the product itself, which are these professional female golfers like Nelly Korda, like the future of the game in Lauren Wynn. So it's a really smart way to tie it all together. Caitlin Clark brought a couple of her teammates, Lexi Hall and Sophie Cunningham, to be her honorary caddies. Golf is fully leaning into bringing these celebs in, and it's awesome for where the sport's headed.
So let's get into that just a little bit more, Gamebridge specifically, because it feels like, yes, Caitlin Clark has an existing relationship with Gamebridge, but also it just feels like Gamebridge wants a lot of these celebs to be coming onto this, so you get this promotion on something like this.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And another great example is Kai Trump getting one of the 3 sponsors exemptions. Kai Trump is going to play at the University of Miami. She actually missed her high school championships to play in the event. It was her first LPGA start. She missed the cut. I think she shot 83.75. So good, and round over round improvement by Kai. But why Gamebridge is doing this and why sponsors do this in professional golf goes so much beyond just getting names in the field. I mean, we see in so many sports creators being hired to promote event, to sell tickets and all this. But in golf, and in the case of Kai Trump, who's actually playing on a sponsor's exemption versus someone like Caitlin Clark, who's just playing in the Pro-Am, you're going to tune in to watch them day over day. Kai Trump has around 8 million followers on social media. So she's going to be creating her own content with a massive reach, doing a ton of marketing for the event by herself. And then you're also going to get all the buzz from the extra, time broadcasts, news channels, like local, national, all the different levels are going to tune in to watch all this. So it's a really smart move by Gamebridge. And I think this week, the way that the stories unfolded was just incredible. And it was a massive step for women's golf.
So I'm glad you mentioned all of this too, because I feel like we've been seeing this larger sort of shift of a lot of these tours and events leaning into their sort of partnerships with influencers. Why is this happening? Or is this a recent thing, or has this been going on for quite some time?
I would say this has been going on over the last 5 years. During the pandemic, golf creators really became a thing. And also during that time, a lot of people who weren't already playing golf or interested in watching golf started to play the game themselves. One of the biggest growing demographics in the game of golf has been young people and young women specifically, which has been awesome to watch. But during this time, as golf creators and YouTube creators have just absolutely exploded to create these multi-million-dollar brands, the PGA Tour and the other professional tours are finding a way, I don't want to say to keep up, but to integrate with these creators. Because if you think about it, in professional golf, an individual sport where all these athletes are essentially independent contractors, they used to be the talent. They used to be the faces. But now when you have young people who are growing up in a digital first, social first world, tuning into the creators, the professional tours have to find a way to get that audience to tune into their broadcasts and to be interested in the product they're providing. So I think a great example of this year. Just about a month ago, the PGA Tour announced they're partnering with Good Golf to be the title sponsor of an event next November in the FedEx Cup Fall. That'll be in Austin. And Good Golf is just an awesome example of YouTube golf and its power. I mean, they got a $45 million investment this spring. Now this fall, they're announced to be a title sponsor for an actual PGA Tour event, becoming the first digital first group to ever sponsor an event of this magnitude. And it's such a seamless integration because these creators aren't just your average Joe golfers as well. I mean, some are, but the best of the best are really, really strong players. I look at Brad Dahlke. He's one of the good guys, and he is a very good guy, but he's also an excellent golfer. He was national champion at Oklahoma. He's played in 2 majors. He's somebody who could have pursued a professional golf career, but didn't. And now he's had this high level experience playing in tour sanctioned events, those 2 majors. He's won 2 Creator Classic events. And then just now we saw the Internet Invitational. And just to put it in perspective, Brad Dahlke, just through winning the Creator Classic and the Internet Invitational this year, has earned over $450,000. That's more than 65 players who competed with PGA Tour status this year. So the PGA Tour and other professional golf tours have to buy into this creator world.
That is so interesting. With the last 90 seconds we got with you, let's talk about next week's LPGA Tour CME Group Tour Championship. It's interesting because this has the highest single prize in women's pro golf history. Let's talk about the impact of this purse when it comes to LPGA's tour and the legitimacy of the tour here.
Yeah, $11 million purse, $4 million going to the winner, the biggest ever. It's amazing. And one of the things that this is going to do is it's going to provide athlete retention. It's going to get more sponsors excited. It's going to further legitimize the LPGA. And I think it's going to be exciting to see the effect this has on young female golfers who are in college deciding whether or not they're going to turn pro, because so many haven't seen that light at the end of the tunnel for how much money you can earn on the LPGA. But I think that we're headed towards a really bright direction for those young future superstars.
Lauren Withrow is a host of The Drop and a golf broadcaster. Lauren, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
All right, we got a lot more Front Office Sports today headed your way right after this quick break.
We now have to figure out if they will be in the playoffs. They're the Super Bowl favorite and have shorter odds to miss the postseason as you and I sit here right now.
Right, but let me ask you this. Do you feel after this 5-4 record, 9 weeks, 10 weeks of the regular season, that their defense is as dominant as it was last year?
But the offense is better.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Fly Pelican, more like grounded Pelican. The Pelicans are 0-6 to start the season. Their main guys aren't their main guys. And it comes to a point where, what do you do if you are Joe Dumars and the leadership of New Orleans?
Pro Basketball Today, only on SportsGrid.
You want to throw $12, $13 million at Kiffin? That's always a possibility. Summerall, they lost the other night to, in that matchup to UTSA. Or do you go back to potentially the mad scientist and Nick Saban, give him, complete control of the athletic department and see if he can turn it around? We'll see. But whatever they go, they're going to need a coach to hit the ground running.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
His daughter, she's on the OF.
Okay.
She's on the OF now.
Is that right?
Yeah, she's on the OF now.
So he's got an OnlyFans daughter and a little son
who says he can beat Curry and LeBron.
And he's coaching a team that was down 72 to
Keep
nothing.
that dude away from polite society.
Okay, brother, I'm with you. I didn't know any of that is.
Numerous pops gotta go.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. In football, changing the game begins with rethinking it, like rethinking how players work on their game. And with wearable technology, advanced analytics, AI, and more, that same innovative thinking that changes the game could also change your portfolio. And Invesco QQQ gives you the access to innovators who are rethinking the world. So let's rethink possibility. Well, let's get you caught up on some of the other stories we're following over at the FOS Water Cooler. All right, and let's bring in from the control room our senior producer, John Shames, who's going to join me and chat some of these stories. Hi, John.
Howdy, Baker. How's it going, man? Nice shirt. We're kind of got some going on here.
I was going to say Denim Mondays. Didn't know that was a thing.
Ooh, you should coin that.
I love this for us. Let's start with some big news in the tennis world. Jannik Sinner defeated who else but Carlos Alcaraz at the ATP Finals for the second year in a row. Sinner took home that $5.1 million prize, the largest of the year. And Sinner now will finish the year with $19 million in earnings, the second largest in tour history for the year. It's also the sixth official battle of the season between Alcaraz and Sinner. Alcaraz won 4 times. Sinner took home 2 of those times, but I mean, it felt like it was way more than 6. It felt like every other tournament they were playing each other in the final.
Yeah, I expect this is something that we're going to continue to see, not just this year, not just next year, but potentially for the next very many years going forward. These two are kind of cemented right at the top right now in those rankings, Baker. Interesting note here. I know it was Sinner who pulled it off yesterday, but Alcaraz actually ahead of him in all-time career earnings. At just 22 years old, he's already 5th on the all-time list. Both Sinner and Alcaraz could potentially pass Andy Murray next year, whose number's around 67 million all-time career earnings. But when you look at the top 3, Baker, no surprise, it's Roger Federer at 130.6 million, Rafa at 134.9, and then Novak Djokovic, $191.3 million.
All right, meanwhile, after finishing its record 7-game international slate in Madrid over the weekend, the NFL already planning for what's set to be an even larger presence abroad next year. Commissioner Roger Goodell said in an interview on NFL Network that the league is exploring more new markets to play in next year, that in addition to debuting in Australia and Rio next season, there also could be up to 9 games played outside the U.S. next year. Goodell said the league could even expand that number to 16 per season in the near future. So that would essentially mean every week for the whole entire season, there's an international game.
Look, and right now, I think that seems like what he has to do.
Yes.
Like, the intrigue is clearly there, Baker. According to Joe Pompliano yesterday, 700,000 people tried buying tickets to this Madrid matchup. The stadium only seats 84,000, so nearly 10 times the amount of people who could fit in were trying to get tickets here. Look, I don't know if that's going to be the case if you actually do have a game every week, and potentially maybe 2 in the same city. I don't know if the draw ends up being quite as high, but clearly there is a major untapped market, or I guess they're starting to tap into it now internationally, and the sky's the limit.
Absolutely, and Goodell even mentioned the Australia game is going to be a really sort of big example for them of how far they can pull off this international sort of expansion here, because Australia is such a far destination. It's farther for these teams to travel to Australia than going to Europe or going to Brazil. So if the NFL could pull off Australia, I mean, that means anything is up for grabs here. Let's move to sneaker news as Pistons superstar Cade Cunningham has re-signed with Nike, this on a new 6-year deal. He's going to receive his own signature shoe also. That's going to drop in 2026-2027, this according to ESPN's Shams Charania. Now, Cunningham now becomes the 6th active NBA player to have a signature shoe deal with Nike. He joins LeBron, Kevin Durant, John Morant, Devin Booker, and Giannis. And of course, he's been with Nike since he entered the NBA draft back in 2021 when the Pistons selected him 1st overall.
Yeah, Baker. Cade Cunningham might be the sneakiest superstar in the NBA right now, averaging over 27 points, just about 10 assists, and over 5 rebounds a game, powering the Pistons to an 11-2 record. That's the 2nd best in the league right now. And I don't think anybody really thought that they were going to be that good this year. They looked great in the conference finals last year, but to take that OKC-esque leap, and really be at the top of your conference during the regular season is super impressive. So I think it really is all clicking right now. I'm not surprised now is when this deal got announced and when it came together. But Baker, you said there's 6 Nike signature athletes.
Yeah.
There could be a 7th soon because of the recent free agency of Stephen Curry, who was spotted wearing Nikes in his first game as a free agent, which to me, that's a big statement.
I mean, the fact that your first chance you've had in over a decade to wear another brand of shoes and you choose Nike. I mean, look, maybe some people are saying we're reading too much into this, but he could have chosen any shoe to possibly wear, and he wore that one.
He knows what he's doing. It's
Absolutely.
Steph Curry.
What are we watching tonight?
So we've got a couple of things on the slate tonight. NBA, we've got Bucks at Cavs at 7 p.m. on Peacock, and on the ice over on ESPN+. Hurricanes at Bruins, 2 12-win teams this year. And then over in the NFL, Monday Night Football, Cowboys at Raiders. That's on ESPN Main and ABC. That's at 8:15, Baker. Not necessarily the prettiest night of sports, but we'll make something happen.
No, absolutely. And you would have thought when they got the schedule of the season earlier in the year, maybe these two teams were really sort of going to take that next leap. But the fact they have a combined 5 wins, sort of a meh game. Shames, thank you so much, and thank you.